This episode of the Right and Wrong podcast is sponsored by Ingram Spark. Stay tuned to hear more and enjoy the episode.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love it.
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing
So
isn't
some
there,
readers love that and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am with Sunday Times bestselling cozy fantasy writer and online content creator, Lucy Jane Wood. Hello.
Hi, what an intro. That feels like a very official title. I might start wearing it on a little badge or something.
It'll be quite a big badge, I think.
Yes, quite a wordy badge.
Unless you did a really small font and the people had to lean really close to you to read
that's
what
going
was
to make for some awkward moments as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll
Well, it
leave the
depends where you
badge. We'll
put
leave
it.
the badge.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. I'm really excited to talk.
Me too.
We always start these episodes with the new thing, the latest exciting thing, and that is your second novel, the upcoming book Uncharmed, which is out September 18th in the UK and I think 2 days earlier in the US. So unless anyone listening is on Patreon right now, it's probably already out. So tell us a little bit about your second published novel, Uncharmed.
That is terrifying to think that when this episode is live, it will actually be out in the world. I hope future Lucy is doing okay right now. So Uncharmed is my second book. My first was Rewitched, which came out last year. And both are set in the same kind of cozy, witchy, 90s inspired witchy universe, but are separate kind of standalone stories with a different cast of characters. So they can be read interchangeably, whichever one catches your fancy. But Uncharmed is the story of Annie Wildwood, who is practically perfect in every which way. And she's a total perfectionist and people pleaser. And she has to learn to embrace her most authentic magic instead when she is unexpectedly tasked with mentoring a troubled teenage witch who's kind of just come into her powers and is really struggling to keep them under wraps. So the two of them are kind of unexpectedly thrust together by the coven and have to learn to embrace each other's authentic, very chaotic kinds of magic.
Okay, sounds cool, sounds fun, and this is, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, this is cozy fantasy, so I imagine it's low stakes, kind of, how else do you describe cozy?
Yeah,
fantasy?
exactly that. I mean, I go in quite low stakes, but I think just kind of naturally as a writer, I do quite enjoy throwing like a little bit of mild peril into the mix. Like I like to have a big baddie in there to kind of root against. So there's a little bit of kind of like gritty plot in there and a little bit of adventure. And I like things to feel a little bit chaotic, but under this umbrella of coziness to kind of lull you into a nice calmness and reassure you that everything is going to be okay in the end. They've just got to learn a few lessons along the way, I guess.
Okay, yeah. And you mentioned that this is not a sequel or anything to do with Rewitched, but it's the same world. It is like an interconnected story.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's like the same universe, and the two main witches, so we have Belle in Rewitched and Annie in Uncharmed, they share a coven. So they are kind of connected together, but the events of Uncharmed actually take place a couple of years before the events of Rewitched. So technically, in a kind of formal timeline, it is a prequel to my first book.
Right.
But yes, you can pick up one without the other. However, there are a few like fun Easter eggs peppered throughout Uncharmed, which you'll appreciate more if you have already read Rewitched before.
Okay, but conversely, if you read Uncharmed first, then you're reading them in chronological order.
Yes, exactly. They tie up quite nicely together. Whichever one you fancy.
Yeah. Okay. And do other than like minor Easter eggs, do like the characters cross into each other's? Well, like do you, as a sort of secondary, does Bella from Rewitched pop up in Uncharmed?
So Belle doesn't, but there are two particular familiar faces who I did bring back for Uncharmed, just because I am particularly fond of those two and have a bit of a soft spot for them both. And yeah, I'm a little bit self-indulgent with things like that. Like if it feels like it's going to be fun to write, then I will just kind of let myself do it and see how it fits into the story. So yeah, I brought back two familiar faces that I'm particularly fond of, which was, fun to revisit those two.
Okay. And was it always something you wanted to write more stories within this world that you'd created? Is that always something you wanted to do?
I basically set out writing these books with zero plan. I
Great.
literally had no intention of, well, with the first one especially, I had literally no intention of doing anything even with it, really. I kind of always assumed that I might try and test the waters and see whether anybody wanted it, but in the end, I assumed that I would probably just self-publish it and have a copy for myself and a copy for my mum, and just kind of prove to myself that I could do this thing that I'd always wanted to do. So I really set out with zero intention of, expanding the world or adding to the cast of characters or anything, but it's just kind of naturally happened that way. And I'm so fond of that world now that it's actually really fun to be able to pick up and explore the people and the parts of it that I am especially fond of.
So would I be right in guessing that Rewitched was the first time that you had sort of tried to write a novel in full?
Yes. Technically, no. I did try and write something while I was at university, but I think it was probably maybe the worst thing that had ever been committed to paper. And I still have it on an old laptop somewhere, but I don't know. I feel like I would have to take some kind of I don't know. I would have to have a major meltdown to even pick up that document, I think, because it's just too mortifying to even think about. So this was the first one that I really ever fully committed to. It was the first idea that has ever completely captured me so much that I felt really compelled enough to sit down and see it through.
Okay. And you've sort of mentioned it. It sounds like there wasn't really any kind of process or plan when it came to writing that Rewitched, way back when.
No, not at all. I was completely stumbling through it, absolutely blind of how you are possibly ever supposed to form a full story in a full book. I was just trying to create something that I loved, enough to keep my bum on that seat and see it through. And I just got completely obsessed with it for a couple of years, and it stole every spare second and spare moment that I had around other work and everything else that was going on. And it took a really long time, and my methods were not sensible or time efficient, but it was just the thought of actually being able to get to the finish line and write the end at the end of a huge Word document was enough to keep me going for that.
But in my experience, writers love to write the end when you finish that draft. But in my experience, that's really the beginning of the process. Now there's so many rounds of editing. Did you edit it a lot before you sort of took it out to shop it out to people?
I did to start with. I actually find it quite helpful, is what I'm starting to realize. I know it's the ultimate golden author rule that everyone always tells you is you should never edit until you get to the end and then you go back and polish it up and turn it into something shiny. But especially kind of the first, the first quarter of a book or something, I'm starting to really learn now that I actually find it quite helpful to go back and polish that up a little bit before I go any further. Because I do think reading those early chapters over and over almost kind of drill it into my head a little bit and remind me what this story is, who these characters are. It's like meeting them over and over again in a bit of a loop to start with, to kind of really pull myself into what this new world is going to be and what this new story is. Because otherwise I kind of lose track of what it even is that I'm supposed to be writing this time around. I find that very early editing quite helpful at the very beginning. But then when it starts to turn into something, where the plot is beginning to blossom kind of thing, that's when I have to go full pelt and just keep looking forwards and don't look down, as they say. The process kind of changes a little bit throughout.
Okay. It's interesting when you talk about people having rules for writing and stuff. I think the only rule that I really adhere to is that there are no rules, and that everyone has their own, because I've also spoken to authors who will edit every chapter as soon as they've written it. That they finish the chapter and they edit the chapter. I've spoken to authors who will write a paragraph and then reread the paragraph 10 times before they start writing the next one.
That feels like you're going to get stuck into a spiral. That might be slightly looking at it too closely. Yeah.
But it's whatever works for you in the end. I think yes, the majority of people do find that what works for them is the vomit draft and just going and just getting the whole thing done and then coming back and editing it. But I think it's whatever really works for you. That kind of,
I love the phrase vomit draft. That's so funny. The junk draft or whatever you want to call it, the zero draft. It really doesn't come naturally to me. I'm currently in that stage at the moment, tinkering with something new. And that moment where you just have to pour out every single rough thought that's in your head onto paper just doesn't come naturally to me at all. I'm such a perfectionist, and I'm constantly, trying to battle this idea that like whatever goes straight on the page has to be the perfect final version. That's the voice in my head that's always telling me like, oh, well, you're not going to be able to do that, so don't write today, kind of thing. So that's the one that I'm constantly battling every single day. So that's, a lot of people love that stage and, get really obsessed with getting sucked into that story for the first time. Yeah. But for me, it's kind of hell. Like that's the real trenches for me. And it's the part afterwards when I can go back in and turn it into something a bit shinier that I enjoy a lot more. That's
good. Well, we established, before we started recording, we established that you and I are both anxious-minded people. And I think a lot of
very
that...
much so. I've never relaxed a day in my life.
Okay, great. I think a lot of that vomit draft that people call it, I think part of the reason that people like it so much as an approach is that they kind of said to them, they're kind of taking all the pressure off themselves, is that they're saying, I'm going to write whatever and it doesn't matter. Like I know I'm going to change it, so nothing here is permanent.
It's so hard to believe that though sometimes.
Yes. I kind of feel more like you. It's like I try to do it, but there is a part of me that will reread a sentence I've just written and just tweak it and then be like, no, I need to keep writing.
I think so too. I don't know whether it just comes from being like, I don't know, a bit of like a high performer at school, or like always setting particular standards for yourself like throughout your life or whatever, just literally never giving yourself a day off ever. But I literally have to drill it into myself like affirmations every time I open up that Word document of being like, this doesn't matter, no one's going to see it, this can be whatever it needs to be. I have to like coax myself into feeling okay about it.
Okay, so you're not, I'm going to guess you're not the sort of writer that's going to be writing something and then write like insert conversation about this here and then just skip to the next bit.
Never. I would rather procrastinate for 6 days in a row and make absolutely no progress than kind of write insert fight scene here. Like that just it doesn't work for me at all. I've got to keep it going and got to keep it chronological.
Okay. So my question then is, we've established
I'm making myself sound like a psycho.
Well, now I'm going to give you a chance to redeem it, because we've established that Rewitched was chaotic in your approach to it, but you've now, obviously with Uncharmed as your second novel, you've done this with a sort of, you have the resources of your agent alongside you, of an editor alongside you. Has the process sort of got more structure now? Have you kind of got a much better handle on what's happening?
I'm not sure about having a handle on anything. It certainly doesn't feel like that at all. But the writing process has, I mean, it feels completely unrecognizable from the writing process that I did Rewitched with. Obviously, it's just a completely different experience when there's time constraints involved and there's eyes on early drafts and, people checking in with you to see how you're getting on and stuff. It's a very, very different experience. I think I will probably always long for that completely free, open experience of tinkering with the first one to see what it might possibly turn into, because with the second one it was like, oh, this has to happen. I was locked in for a 2-book deal. It was like, oh, I have to make this happen. I have to meet these deadlines. A completely different writing experience, and I definitely had to be a lot more disciplined with myself, which in some ways actually does help me, because I certainly work better under pressure and I work better when I have a short time window. And because I am such an overthinker, it almost meant that I didn't have time to overthink. Like I just had to barrel on and keep going. So it was definitely a lot more of an efficient writing process with the second one.
Okay. And were your agent and your editor, were they kind of involved from the start, or were you sort of like, I want to write this and when it's ready I'll let you guys see it?
I think like with the ideas, like the initial ideas that go down and, scratching that plot out from nothing, that was just kind of really me by myself. And I pitched it to them as it's going to be this kind of perfectionist witch who's always using her magic to be as perfect as she possibly can for everyone around her. That was kind of like the umbrella pitch that I'd let them know. And they were like, okay, cool, go for it. And then my editor and my agent came in. I'd probably drafted it about 3 times or something. And that was the version that they then saw. They gave me some notes and we, that's when all the structural edits start and that kind of thing. That was kind of the point that they stepped in and I had a bit of assistance.
Okay, right. Okay, so you did it pretty much independently once you'd actually started writing the prose and stuff, and then just
with
the
that
finish
one.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then it's my editor. I have a really close relationship with her. She's actually left the publisher now and has gone freelance, but I have a very close relationship with her. So that was once we got to kind of the structural edits point, and she'd read that kind of third, fourth draft. That was when we went for six cups of coffee and a very over-caffeinated, like, creative brainstorm meeting together. And she's like, "This is what I think's working. This is what I don't think is working." And kind of like sends me back to the drawing board a little bit to jig things around.
Okay. Yeah, that's useful to have. And I guess there's more stress because, like you said, that, you know, you're with the second book, you're under contract, you know that there's a timeline. You don't have 2 years to kind of mess around with it. But you do have like a lot of support systems around you and people who you can like tap on to kind of help you out with certain things.
It swings and roundabouts, and I think I probably use them more for just like pep talks and motivation rather than, you know, anything too writing based. I kind of just need someone cheering me on a little bit in the background. I think that's where they really come into their own.
Yes. Yeah. Agents are always playing that part therapist role as well.
Oh, 100%.
If you're thinking about publishing your own novel, if you have a story that's ready to be shared with the world, then look no further than Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark offers everything you need to publish, promote, sell, and print your book. You'll be able to reach millions of readers worldwide with powerful tools created specifically for independent authors. And you can get started for free at ingramspark.com/learn more. I'd love to change tack a little bit here and talk about some of the other things that you've been doing, which actually predates your writing, I believe. And that's that you have been running a YouTube channel and you're on other social media as well.
For my sins, yes.
For your sins. I looked at your YouTube channel and I found the earliest video from 12 years ago. So you've been doing this for a while.
You're really exposing me there.
I just wanted to establish your credentials here. You know, you've been doing that for a long time.
Who is this girl?
It doesn't look like you were always doing the book stuff. When did you move into doing more bookish stuff? Or it's largely vlog stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always been a bit of everything, to be honest. Like, I've never really seen what I do online as fitting into one particular category or whatever. I think the kind of general term for it is like lifestyle content.
Yeah.
So you are the theme, really, like me as a person is the theme. And then the videos can be kind of anything branching off whatever's going on in my life at the time, really. So, you know, the ones that you were looking at that were 12 years ago, when I was, you know, a lot younger and a lot more naive, and I talked a lot more about personal things and the experiences I was going through in my early 20s and all that kind of stuff. I think as I've got a little bit older, I've pulled away from that slightly, because you learn that, you know, the internet doesn't need to know everything about you. There has to be some boundaries in there somewhere. And I think just as I have, grown up a bit and realized what I love talking about and the things that I'm really passionate about in life, books certainly kind of stepped out as one of the really kind of key themes that I talked about a lot, as well as just kind of general, cozy vlogging and taking people along for the ride kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. Is it? I know it's obviously Book Talk on TikTok. Is it BookTube on YouTube?
Yes, I believe it is. And
okay.
I wouldn't ever consider myself to be like a booktuber. I don't think I'm like hardcore enough to have earned that title yet. I just, every so often love to say, oh, I read this book and I thought it was amazing, basically. Like, and if you enjoy all the other stuff that I enjoy, if you have, you know, similar sense of style and decor and, you know, similar sense of humor and stuff, then you'll probably quite like this book kind of thing.
Okay, right. And have you talked much about your kind of writing and the publishing journey on the vlogs, or do you try and keep that more separate?
Yeah, when I was first writing Rewitched, I kept it as a completely private, personal experience. I didn't say anything about it online. I just kind of very vaguely mentioned that I was working on a project and that was taking up my free time kind of thing. I think I just thought, as soon as I say this is what I'm doing, it's going to put way too much pressure on it and I'm going to overthink it into oblivion and I won't get anywhere with it. If I'm, you know, have people waiting to see what it is, or people interested in supporting it already, or that kind of thing, like that's just way too much pressure. So I kept the actual writing experience completely private. But I mean, I've always talked about books, and before I was a full-time content creator, I was a freelance journalist. So writing has kind of always been, a steady theme in my life. So it certainly wasn't like a completely unexpected surprise for everyone when I did eventually share what I'd been working on and the deal that I had landed.
Yes, I imagine, people that followed your vlogs could see like, oh yeah, I can connect those dots. That makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I think
Okay.
it was quite like a natural progression kind of thing.
Okay. And then outside of YouTube, you also have over 100,000 followers on Instagram and TikTok together.
Yes. I try not to think about the numbers. It's a bit mental.
Well, you're in the numbers now where like the human brain can't really comprehend it. Like you can't picture what 100,000 people looks like.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, and I mean, you don't get that many people on every single piece of content that you ever post, but seeing those numbers crawling up all the time is, a little bit disconcerting.
No, it's a good thing. It's positive, right?
I suppose so, yeah.
The only way sometimes if I'm looking at those kinds of numbers and I want a frame of reference, what I do is I go on Google and I look up the size of sports stadiums in the world.
Oh no.
And then you can see, you find one that's the right size, and then you find a picture of it full, and that's the number of people.
And then you completely terrify yourself into never posting ever again. It's perfect.
Exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
So as the industry has evolved, being out there, being like having a presence online on social media, that can be a huge boon for authors. And I think a lot of publishers do encourage their authors to kind of be more active.
Yes.
That being said, a lot of authors, famously introverts, scared of that kind of thing, apprehensive about doing it.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to writers or authors who are thinking about trying to sort of build up a presence online through whatever social media it might be?
Yeah, I completely get that. And I always think it's such a funny like pairing of characteristics that authors have to like pull from themselves, because I think you're right. Like I think authors are drawn to writing and to books because most of us are naturally quite introverted, quiet people. And I think to some extent that actually happens with vlogging. And well, it used to back in the day anyway, before it became this like huge shiny industry. I think quite quiet, introverted people were drawn to sitting in their room and chatting to a camera to reach out and find a bit of community online. So that's certainly why I started YouTube, 12, 13 years ago or whatever it was. So yeah, it's similar characteristics. And then with being an author, you're suddenly expected to appear on camera and talk eloquently about the emotional process of writing a book, and here it is, look at this, please buy my book kind of thing. So it is like a real opposites situation. I think it can be quite a scary thing to do, and it does really feel like putting yourself out there, but I think there's two kind of key pieces of advice that I like to keep in mind with it all. Is number one, there's this fear of kind of, oh, you never know who might be watching, you never know who's keeping an eye on you kind of thing. But I always kind of really love to flip that on its head and think like, well, who might be watching? The whole way that I ended up getting my books published was that an editor at one of the biggest publishers in the UK happened to stumble across my YouTube channel because she was looking for vlogs about New York. And if I hadn't uploaded those videos and shared those little moments, she would never have found me, and she would never have heard me mention that I had this project I was working on, and things wouldn't have worked out the way they have done. So I love to flip that kind of fear on its head and think, well, you literally never know who's watching. All it takes is the one right pair of eyes to come across your book and see it and be intrigued by it. And I know quite a few people that's happened to, like self-published authors who an agent has stumbled across a TikTok that they've made and has then inquired, and they've landed a publishing deal through it. Like the most amazing things can happen through it. So I think that's quite a motivating thing to keep in mind. And now that I said I had a second thing and I can't remember what it was. So maybe we'll just leave it at that until it comes back to me.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great way of looking at it. Is like, yes, there are some downsides and there's some like bad actors out there.
Yes.
I like to think that there's probably more good actors out there, or at least apathetic actors.
Of course.
Outnumbering the bad ones. And
exactly.
I've had a few authors on now who have found either their agent or their editor /book deal through being scouted on TikTok, usually, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't think it's that unusual anymore. I think it's, a huge factor of publishing now that you kind of have to get on board with. Otherwise, you're probably going to get left behind. It's just a big part of it now is that marketing books on TikTok, especially Instagram, YouTube, whatever, it's this huge springboard that you can provide and create for yourself. And if you don't allow yourself to do that, then, you're gonna lose out. You've got to give yourself permission to put yourself out there and see what can happen.
Yeah. I had Rebecca Thorne on recently, and we were talking about a similar kind of thing, and she was saying how she thinks the industry has shifted in the way that querying agents is not what it used to be, and we were kind of, so many agents now that they are actively browsing TikTok to try and to look hunt for authors, because so many people are self-publishing on TikTok now.
Absolutely. I think that's a real thing that publishers are now maybe not necessarily top prioritizing, but really keeping in mind all the time is that there's an absolute treasure trove of amazing books out there that have been self-published, which have a really dedicated following to them. And it would be stupid for them to not tap into that. It's an absolute gold mine just waiting to be discovered.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm realizing now I've had lots of cozy fantasy on recently.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I remembered my second piece of advice.
Okay, go.
My second piece of advice is, I think if the reason that you are not making content, not wanting to put yourself out there is because you find it cringe, I think I love this idea that happiness is on the other side of cringe, and freedom is on the other side of cringe. And this idea that creating content is an embarrassing, cringy thing to put yourself out there. I love this idea of just if you just give yourself permission to be cringe, you'll find a lot more on the other side of it. It's only really the judgment of others that is the concept of cringe. So it's just kind of giving yourself permission to be silly and feel a little bit more freedom with things like that. And then the other side of that is a lot more free and joyful, I think.
I would imagine also a lot of the content which does end up coming across as awkward and janky is when people are overcompensating for what they think 100%. Might be perceived as cringe, and then it ends up being cringe because they weren't just themselves and were.
You've got to commit to the cringe.
Exactly, yeah. Just commit to it and be embrace it, be relaxed about it.
Yes.
Because it doesn't feel, I feel like we've said cringe too much, but it doesn't feel cringe.
It's a key word though. I think it stops so many people from doing the thing that they want to do because they're worried that it might be perceived that way. But I mean, really, cringe people tend to generally be very happy. Myself included.
Yeah, because I think if you don't think it's cringe, then I think generally it's not, because you're it's
absolutely.
The way you're carrying yourself. It's the relaxed nature of it. I get that. Yeah. I get that. But it's difficult. No matter how you approach it.
Completely. Yeah. Putting yourself out there is always one of life's biggest challenges, but great things do tend to happen when you do.
Yes, exactly. You're opening yourself up to more opportunities, even if every now and again, you'll catch some strays from somewhere or another.
Yes, absolutely. That does happen.
Yes. Some great advice in there. And that brings us to the point in the episode where I pack up your things and ship you off and say, Lucy, if you were stranded on a desert island with nothing but a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
I would really appreciate actually my bags all being packed for me and just being shipped off to a desert island. That sounds really great.
And put in storage. So I'm just keeping them safe for you. This is respectful kidnapping.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate that. So you know how earlier we were talking about being a chronic overthinker all the time. So obviously hearing this question in advance a few days ago from my publicist was, I would much appreciated, because I like to, be prepared. But this is also just an overthinker's worst nightmare of a question, I feel. And I, came up with a few very quick answers. And I was like, I would want to take probably The Secret History or Little Women or Piranesi, some of my absolute favorite books. And then I was like, well, actually, none of those, because I tend to lean towards cozy fiction. I love autumnal, dark academia-y, strange, very comforting, cozy books like that you tend to read in the colder months. And then I was thinking, well, if I was on a gorgeous tropical desert island. Is that the vibe that I want to go for? So then I was really spiraling and thinking like, oh, maybe I need to pick some kind of lovely, easy summer read that I would want to reach for over and over. Like, I thought, oh, maybe I'll take a Kristen Hanna with me, like Firefly Lane or something like that. Another one of my absolute favorite books. So I really did just completely overthink this question into oblivion. And I think I've taken all the fun out of it now. I think my natural answer, though, if I'm just going to pick something that I will want to reach for over and over and over and just never get sick of, I'm going to go for Little Women, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's a classic.
It's such a classic. It's such a comfort. I would never get tired of that book. It brings me so much joy. And I think it would be quite inspiring to read as well.
Yes. I mean, it's an empowering novel.
Exactly.
When people pick classics like that, I love to ask, how do you feel about the film adaptations?
I am very passionately in love with both the 90s version and the 2020s version. So if I could also pack some kind of like, what were those like tiny portable DVD players that we used to have in the early 2000s? Like if I could also sneak one of those onto the island, then I would really appreciate that too.
Oh, the ones that like flipped up like a mini
Exactly,
laptop?
that you'd have on like, that people would have on like a car journey or whatever.
Yeah. Retro tech.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. It's always nice to know that you're a big fan of the book and then you're also a big fan of both adaptations, because
yes, very much
usually
so.
people are fans of one or the other.
I just love both. I mean, you can't go wrong with Winona Ryder, like ever. So she is like an amazing Jo. But then the newer version is just like a perfect film, honestly.
It's the new one has like a crazy stacked cast as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just like such a beautiful film. Every time it's on TV, I simply have to tune in and watch it, whatever point it's at. My husband is like, we cannot watch this film again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my wife's the same with the new Emma, the one with Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah.
She loves that one. Awesome. A great choice. Little Women, an absolute classic to take with you.
I'm not sure it's very tropical island suitable, really, but we're going to have to roll with it. Maybe you could send me to like a castaway cabin in like a Canadian forest somewhere instead, and then it would suit me a little bit better.
Sure. You can go to a cabin in the Canadian woods.
I'll take that.
I mean, I imagine you'll have to do more to survive, but I don't know, maybe not.
But I won't get horribly sunburnt, so...
That's true. You definitely won't get horribly sunburnt.
I'll take that situation instead.
Okay, it's a deal. Next up, we are going to chat a bit more about Lucy's publishing journey, getting more into the sort of business side of things, how she connected with her agent, Maddie Belton, who was on the show a while back, and Lucy's experiences with everything and what she's up to at the moment. That will be in the extended episode, which you can find at www.patreon.com/rightandwrong. Well, that's what we have over
Pretty
here.
much sums
It's
it
just
up,
always
yeah.
raining. Amazing. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, and it's been so
amazing.
fun chatting with you, Lucy. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about everything that you've been up to in your kind of quite incredible journey into publishing.
Thank you very much.
It's been fascinating chatting with you.
I've had such a lovely time. I feel like I've absolutely chatted your ear off there, so thank you
great.
for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank
for.
you so much for having me.
And for everyone listening, Uncharmed is out 18th of September in the UK, 16th of September in the US, in all the usual places. And if you want to keep up with what Lucy is doing, you can find her on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Lucy Jane Wood, on TikTok at Lucy Wood. That's Lucy with 3 Ys. And to support this podcast, like, follow, and subscribe. Join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Lucy, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode. Shout out time. One of my amazing patrons, Lee Foxton, is querying their debut novel. It's a family drama, commercial fiction along the lines of Jojo Moyes and David Nichols. Fingers crossed, I am rooting for you. Good luck.
A mochi moment from Tara, who writes, "For years, all my doctor said was eat less and move more, which never worked. But you know what does? The simple eating tips from my nutritionist at Mochi. And after losing over 30 pounds, I can say you're not just another GLP-1 source. You're a life source. Thanks, Tara. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Tara is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
If you're a custodial supervisor at a local high school, you know that cleanliness is key, and that the best place to get cleaning supplies is from Grainger. Grainger helps you stay fully stocked on the products you trust, from paper towels and disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Plus, you can rely on Grainger for easy reordering, so you never run out of what you need. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.